Huimia Buddha Kuno Miarega Vijja Charana Sambana Kuno Yui Tobiro body. Do she, Luyen body, Luyen do she. Timpia Shinigavara. Pita Nale Dinrata Nale Valley. Visa Sura Adinya. Serena Sura Ajin. Serena Joe Adinya Yara Valley. Serena Messiah Adinya not Mayahu. Though the Adinya Sabi Adinya, Jansa Adinya. Singing to Adinya body. We logi Adinya Sura Adinya near Amu Shivara. Adinya na Shibiro. Serena Messiah and Lucian and Yamchao. You know, which are Sure Adinya Shivi Malu. Serena Sure a Jimishiga. Ninja Mayanimabu. Yagaroda Moha Kitari Ninja Yanimo. So now the Chinshiviro, which are who a tea Yamasivian Lucia Lamma Mayo Fene, Aloechori Chinilo, Kri Metuemele Sitapara. Puramias Vagaro Eddie Wizan, Jarana, a Gonzon Wally, a Torti, by Saint Dora Fido, with a Sarana Chine, Pizon Varel, Biotavara. Other Poco Yunjiviro, Mimiro Leve, Mimirone. We were tying down Nevoli with a piece of Serena and piece of book. Luapada Ayayama Adinya Mangoli Jinja Atumada Tanya Nine, Omni Nine Boa Omimu Yanevale A Gukamaro. Adinya Muso Shivale, when I saw a buere, Tudamia Kore Sabedi, Mibiro, Swan and Mia Chansare, Saint Damia Adi. The Madiari art of the trade and the Mayashi Adi. Logi Wiza Adi, Tiba Adi Rivoli. The relation of Yayiva. The Kugama Adi Shivale. These are Jinja. I told who Serena Machidi at wet. Serena Shima Lucien and Yamara. She can do that piece on Lucy and Lupidare. Say go, beauty and child Lucy. Say the teeny age and Lucy, Lucy Tada. A dinyani, a demon, she can say with a sense she without. Each piece of without the care in Yinda. Yama Buna louded, she do be so she. Pero ma power out and out Tamacharo. The Edilo Wizan is a Jimmy she did. Power out and out. Jabi the holy. Duri. See to carry down the letter, leve, a mia, and a tita about it. Die out. Buddha, which I said not the Vana Kunova. Kuno, I will give you a body. King the city, Puaviro, Miro, let me do a time down the Miro. Pavana, Palabody. But it's in Anapana singing to a dinya, check and video body. Pavana Pala Ulidipna Pavana Tiari Atovido, Pualu Yashi Adinya Chotea Tila Ajimoli Miru Maleve အဲ့ဒါတွေရောက်လာဖို့ရလာဖို့သိလိုအပ်ပါတယ်ဆိုတာပေါ့လေဒီနားလည်ရပါတယ်လိုအပ်တဲ့အတိုင်းကျင့်သုံးလို့ရှိရင်ကျင့်သုံးသလောက်ကိုယ်မှလက်တွေ့အသိဉာဏ်တွေဖြစ်တော့လာမှာတော့သိကြပါတယ်
During the previous few days, the Venerable Sayadaw explained among the various virtues of the Buddha one particular virtue, namely the virtue of endowment or fulfillment with clear vision and virtuous conduct, vijja charana sampana, in the Pali language. And he explained all of this to the audience. And vijja in essence is vision or knowledge, and charana is conduct. And it is because of virtuous conduct that knowledge or clear vision, vijja, arises. It goes without saying that without proper conduct, charana, vision, clear vision, vijja, will not arise. Now, there are various forms of knowledge around. For instance, knowledge which is based on general learning. And then there is knowledge based on thinking, analyzing, and then also knowledge gained from practice and so on. Now, though we may possess clear vision, we may not gain peace if there is no practice, no virtuous conduct, charana. And again, conversely, virtuous conduct without clear vision cannot exist, or should not exist either. And if there is virtuous conduct but no clear vision, then one will risk to slip off the path, and one may risk, or one's spiritual journey may take a long time. Now, the Buddha has perfected this virtue of clear vision and virtuous conduct, vijja charana sampano. And he was fully endowed with it. And we can then believe in the Buddha as such, believe in his quality of clear vision and virtuous conduct. And we should then try ourselves to be fulfilled with this quality as much as possible, or to a certain extent. Now, this quality of clear vision and virtuous conduct, if practiced, will lead, during one's ordinary life, will lead to success in one's life. As the Venerable Sayadaw has mentioned earlier on already, there are various forms of knowledge. So there's the Suttamaya Panya knowledge, which is based on hearing or learning. And then there's knowledge based on thinking. Then there is knowledge, Samattamaya Panya, knowledge which arises out of tranquility practice. And then there is knowledge of that arises through or mundane, or there's mundane knowledge. Sorry. And if we are fulfilled with morality, sila, as part of the virtuous conduct, charana, then we become a distinct human being. If we practice samatha or concentration, then our attitude will become that of a human being, so a humane attitude. And when wisdom is there, then we become an outstanding or superior human being. And so it follows from this that our life will not be of a low standard. And again, the opposite of this is, in the absence of the practice or development of clear vision and virtuous conduct, the life of a being will be, the standard of life of a human being will be low. And the Buddha was fulfilled with this virtue of clear vision and virtuous conduct, and this then may cause faith and confidence, saddha, to arise in us. And then coupled with the power of reflection, patisankha bala, and also coupled with the power of mental development, namely bhavana bala, we will be able to bring about knowledge. And for this, we need to control ourselves, also our behavior, through morality. This is very important. And then, if we practice in this way, then knowledge is bound to arise within ourselves to a certain extent. And the Venerable Sayadaw assures this.
Buddha Vipassana Samana Kuno Ayum Pubiro Mimiru Tanama Yungji Mu Lekham Huvori. The whole of days or a whole nine years or a body. Kuno Diviro Lekhan Yuji Dada Diari. Say Dada Diari, no be a melusura. No baby, a middle Tanamaguna Sosawing of Yogere. Which are Serenat Namiolo Moli Pieso or Jusa Atufu Lurel, Illusoravada. There are very Namiolo Pieso Voya, a council near the Ritama. Buddha Kono Baba, our Bulo, no Lare Dada Diago. Tote Pumio, Kaimia Babuya, and a charge at CR 11 Piezo Buya, and go Titan and go volley. A council Dada Sashi, the council people. A tote Yahuya, and volley. Juba Yepa. တိပ္ပံအကောင်းဆုံးပဲတိပ္ပံတရားအထုတ်လိုက်လို့ရှိရင်အခုပြောခဲ့တဲ့ဝိဇ္ဇာနဲ့စေတနာတွေဟာဒီထဲမှာပါသွားနိုင်ပါတယ်အဲ့ဒါလေးကိုပုံစံလေးတစ်ခုပြပြီးတော့ကြားညအနေနဲ့ပေါ့လေတင်ပြပါအောင်မယ်
if one reflects on the Buddha's virtue of clear vision and virtuous conduct, then this will lead to the arising of faith and confidence in one's own stream of consciousness. And one will come to an acceptance and to a conviction that this is really true. And when one then reflects on this virtue of clear vision and virtuous conduct that was explained earlier on, one will make an effort to practice meditation and to gain this virtue. Now, the best way to be fulfilled with this virtue of Vicacharana and Sampanno is through the practice through Satipatthana meditation. And it is through Satipatthana that one can arouse and bring to fulfillment this virtue of Vicacharana. And one can develop this virtue to a maximum, to perfection, so that it becomes an unsurpassable quality. Once again, Satipatthana meditation is the best way to gain this virtue. And in the practice of Satipatthana, this virtue of Vicacharana is included. And the Venerable Sayadaw would like to sandwich in one illustration at this point.
Udriptandya Atoli Sora Chiga Tilari Paniva Sayadaw Yema Mimine Timen Sasago Chain Savida Sanida Purelem Hiao, Lurelem Hiao body. Pira Chacha, Tonsang Bisi level Yogine Timia Dala body, a Pulem Hi, Lulem Hiao. 9 ချိန်ပြီးတော့စတော့သုံးဆွဲနေတာပေါ့လေဒါဘောချင်ဒီမတ်ချင်ညူတာဆိုတာပေါ့လေစရဏ15ပါးထဲမှာပါနေပါတယ်တော့ဒါလည်းယောဂီတွေမှာရှိနေပါတယ်ဒီအချက်ပြီးတော့ဂျာကရိယနုယောဂဆိုတာဂျာကရိယနုယောဂဆိုတာကနုံနုံကြားကြားပေါ့လေအစ်စစ်ကြီးမဖြစ်ဖဲနဲ့အပူတွေပြင်းနှိုးကြတယ်တက်ကြွတယ်ဖြက်လက်တယ်ပေါ့လေပြီးတော့အဲ့နေလည်းပဲဆင်ញင်တယ်ပေါ့လေအတိုင်းအတာနဲ့ပေါ့လေအဲ့ဒါကတော့ဂျာကရိယနုယောဂလို့ခေါ်ပါတယ်ဓမ္မဒီအလေးကျင့်တွေကစပြီးတော့လုပ်ပေးနေရတာပါပဲသီလရှိပါသီလပေါ့လေစောင့်တည်ဆောင်နေရတဲ့သီလတွေပေါ့လေကိုယ်မှုလုံးမှုတွေမကျွလို့မရအောင်ဆိုပြီးတော့ထိမ့်ချုပ်တာပေါ့လေအလေးထားကောင်းနေလေဒါဆရာသီလကိုနေ့စဉ်စောင့်ထိန်မှုဆိုတာလည်းရှိနေပါတယ်ဓမ္မပြီးတော့အိန္ဒြိယသဝရဆိုတာတွေ့မြင်ကြားသိရသမျှပေါ့လေအဲ့ဒီလိုအရာတွေမှာလည်းပဲလူကြီးမှုလောဘတွေမကျေနပ်မှုမုန်းမှုဒေါသတွေစသည်ပေါ့လေမဖြစ်စေပဲနဲ့မျက်စိလည်းထိတ်နားလည်းထိတ်နှာခေါင်းလည်းထိတ်ရှားလည်းထိတ်ကိုယ်လည်းထိတ်ဆိုတာပေါ့လေအဟုသူမဖြစ်ရအောင်လို့အိန္ဒြေတွေကိုညီသက်အောင်ထိမ့်သိမ်းဆောက်ရှောက်နေတာကြည်ကျင်နေမကြည့်နားထောင်ခြင်းနဲ့နားမထောင်ပေါ့လေဒီမှာထိမ့်သိမ်းနေတာအိန္ဒြိယသဝရဆိုတာဒါတွေပါနေပါတယ်ဒါမိမိတို့ ਨੇ ထိုက်တန်တဲ့စရဏအကျင့်တွေပေါ့ပြီးတော့လည်းပဲအခုလာပြီးတော့အာထုတ်တာဟာဒီပြည့်အကျိုးသွားတွေကိုသိပြီးတော့လာကြတာပဲတတ္တတရားလည်းပါလိမ့်မယ်အနည်းဆုံးအခြေခံကတော့အကုသိုလ်ကမကောင်းကျိုး မကောင်းတဲ့ကိုယ်လုံးစိတ်ဓာတ်အပြုမှုတွေကမကောင်းကျိုးကောင်းတဲ့တန်ရှင်းတဲ့စိတ်တွေကိုယ်လုံးစိတ်ဓာတ်အပြုမှုတွေကကောင်းကျိုးရတယ်ဆိုတဲ့အသိစိတ်ဓာတ်တရားမှတစ်ဆင့်ဆက်ပြီးတော့အခုမိမိတို့အားထုတ်နေတဲ့အကျင့်လမ်းစဉ်ဟာဝိဇ္ဇာစရဏသမ္မာနာဂုဏ်နဲ့ပြည့်စုံတော်မူတဲ့မြတ်စွာဘုရားရဲ့အကျင့်လမ်းစဉ်ပဲဆိုတာပေါ့ဒီဂုဏ်တော်တွေသိရတဲ့တတ္တတရားတွေဖြစ်တာဒါပေါ့ဒါတတ္တတရားပေါ့ဒီဒါစရဏတွေမှာပါနေပါတယ်အရာရာမှာပေါ့လေအကုသိုလ်မဖြစ်အောင်လို့တတိထားတာတန်ရှင်းတဲ့ကိုယ်လုံးစိတ်ဓာတ်အပြုတွေသာဖြစ်ရေးအတွက်ပေါ့လေတတိရှိနေတာပေါ့လေနော်ဒါပေါ့ပြီးတော့မကောင်းမှုဒုစရိုက်တရားတွေပေါ့လေဒါတွေလုံးရမှာပြောရမှာပေါ့လေကြံစည်မိမှာပေါ့လေရှစ်တာဘောဒုစရိုက်တွေလာမှာကြောက်တာဟဲ့ဥဒ္ဒပဆိုတာပေါ့လေအဲ့လိုဒုစရိုက်တရားတွေရှောင်ရတဲ့တတ္တိတွေမွေးနေတာကောင်းတဲ့ကိုယ်လုံးစိတ်ဓာတ်အပြုအမူတွေပေါ့လေလုံရတဲ့တတ္တိတွေမွေးနေတာဝိရိယတွေထားနေတာပဲအထူးအားဖြင့်တော့ပေါ်တဲ့အာယုံမလွတ်တတ်မှတ်နိုင်ရေးအတွက်အမြဲတစေပေါ့လေကျုံရဆိုင်နေတာတက်ကြွနိုးကြပြီးတော့ဖြတ်လာနဲ့လာခဲ့ဘာပဲလာခဲ့အမှတ်မယ်ဆိုတဲ့အနေနဲ့ပေါ့လေအပူရပြင်းကျုံရဆိုင်နေတာပေါ့လေဒါလည်းပါနေတာပိဋိကျင်ဤအမှန်နေလည်းပဲလေ့လာထားတာနေ့စဉ်နဲ့အမျှလည်းပဲဘယ်လိုကျင့်သုံးရမယ်ဆိုတဲ့ဟာကြီးနားထောင်နေတာဒီတဲကကျင့်သုံးနည်းတွေရရှိပြီးတော့အားထုတ်ရင်အားထုတ်သလောက်စိတ်တည်ငြိမ်ပြီးတော့ပေါ့လေအသိဉာဏ်လေးတွေဖြစ်နေတာကိုယ်တိုက်တာနဲ့ကိုယ်စရဏတွေတော့ယောဂီတွေမှာပြည့်စုံနေတာပဲနောက်ဒီစရဏတရားတွေဟာနည်းနည်းကနေပြီးတော့နောက်များလာမယ်တေးရကနေပြီးတော့ကြီးလာမယ်ငရနေပြီးတော့ထွားလာမယ်ပေါ့လေဒီမှာနုရနေပြီးတော့တဖြည်းဖြည်းရင်းကျက်လာမှာပဲရင်းကျက်လာပြီးတော့ကိုယ်နဲ့တန်တဲ့ဝိဇ္ဇာဆိုတာရသွားမှာပါပဲဝိဇ္ဇာနဲ့ထိုက်တန်တဲ့စရဏအကျင့်ကျင့်တော့ထိုက်တန်တဲ့ဝိဇ္ဇာခေါ်တဲ့အသည့်ပေါ့လေဒါရရှိသွားမှာပါပဲဥပဒနာပညာဟာဒါဝိဇ္ဇာထဲမှာထည့်ထားပါတယ်
Now the meditators are practicing Satipatthana. And in this practice of Satipatthana, meditation, basic morality or virtue siddha is included. And when it comes to taking food, then one has to observe certain limits. One has to take food in moderation and avoid taking too much food or avoid taking not enough food. And the food has to be suitable. This in the Pali language is known as bhojane and matanyutta. And it is one of the 15 forms of virtuous conduct. Another one that is also being practiced by the meditators here is known as Jagariya Nuyoga, meaning that without being slack or sluggish, lethargic in one's practice, one should rather be alert, active, and and there should be urgently one should practice. This particular quality is known as wakefulness or devotion to wakefulness. And then furthermore, the meditators have to ensure with virtuous sila that they control their physical and verbal behavior so as to avoid any kind of transgressions. And this should be done on a daily basis all the time. Then another practice, another form of conduct that the meditators here are practicing is Indriya Samvara Sila, namely restraint of the senses. So, whatever the object may be that one sees, hears, smells, tastes, touches, or thinks about, one should control one's senses, namely the eyes, the ears, and so on, so as to avoid, or so as not to allow greed, lobha, and hatred, dosa, to arise. So, even though possessing eyes, even though one may want to look at a particular object, one should control one's eyes and not take a look at the object. And this too is a form of charana practice or conduct. Then it is with faith and confidence, saddha, that all of you have come here. And one should have faith and confidence at least in the law of karma, namely that wholesomeness will lead to wholesome deeds will lead to wholesome results, and unwholesome deeds will lead to unwholesome results. And one should also have confidence in the fact that this path of practice is the Buddha's path, and it leads to the endowment with clear vision and virtuous conduct. Furthermore, the meditators have to continuously pay attention, be aware, so that unwholesomeness, any kind of unwholesomeness, akusala, cannot arise in the mind. And furthermore, the meditator should develop the courage to... the meditator should be ashamed and afraid of any form of unwholesome conduct, ducharita, or actions. And to this end, one should develop some courage. And so one needs to make effort towards this and apply oneself wholeheartedly and in an urgent manner. Apart from all these, a meditator also needs to study the true method, and part of this is daily listening to discourse that explains certain points of the practice. For instance, how to calm the mind. And to some extent, all these 15 forms of virtuous conduct, charana, are present in the meditators. And these 15 forms of virtuous conduct should be developed, namely from just a little bit of practice to much virtuous conduct, and from a weak virtuous conduct to a strong virtuous conduct. It should be developed from tender, yes, from a tender form of virtuous conduct to a very durable form of virtuous conduct. And the meditators certainly here will, as a result of this virtuous conduct and charana, gain their respective level of clear vision, vijja.
လက်တွေ့အဖြစ်ဆိုလို့ရှိရင်ကျရဏ15ပါးတွေကရူပဇံ4ပါးနှုတ်လိုက်လို့ရှိရင် ခုလောလောဆယ်အသက်ဆိုင်နေတာကတော့ကျန်စရဏတစ်ဆက်တစ်ပါးကတော့မိမိတို့နဲ့ဆိုင်နေပါတယ်အဲ့ဒီကျန်စရဏ15ပါးကိုပုံလိုက်လို့ရှိရင်သီလသိက္ခာတစ်ပုံသမာဓိသိက္ခာတစ်ပုံနဲ့ပညာသိက္ခာတစ်ပုံပေါ့လေသုံးပုံထွက်လာပါတယ်သီလသိက္ခာကတော့မလုပ်ကောင်းပြောကောင်းတဲ့အရာတွေကရှောင်ကျင်တာအဲ့ဒီမှာအရာအိန္ဒြေဆောင်စည်းတာတို့ဘာလို့ဒီလေးလဲပါသွားပါတယ်အစာတော့အတိုင်းရှိတယ်လေကြီးကောင်းတဲ့အလေးထားဒီလာလဲပါသွားပါတယ်တော့ပြီးတော့စရဏတွေကလည်းပဲဝိရိယတတိတမာတိတော့စရဏက15ပါးထဲမှာတော့မပါဘူးပေါ့လေရူပဇာနဲ့မှာတော့ပါနေပါတယ်သို့တော့ဝိရိယတတိယူလို့ရှိရင်တမာတိလည်းပဲဒီတဲ့အလိုလိုပါသွားပါတယ်အဲဒီကခွဲယူလို့ရှိရင်ဝိရိယတတိတမာတိခေါ်တဲ့တမာတိသိက္ခာလည်းပဲဒီမှာပါသွားပါတယ်နောက်တုတ္တဆိုတာကျင်နိမာနေလေ့လာတာပေါ့ကျင်နိမာနေလေ့လာပြီးတော့အာရုံနဲ့မစိတ်နဲ့ချိန်သားကြိုက်ပြီးတော့ယုံနာပိုင်းခြားသိမှုကအစပေါ်လေအစင်းစင်တဘာဝတရားတွေကိုရှင်းလင်းပြတ်သားစွာပေါ့လေတိသွားတာပညာပေါ့အဲ့ဒါတော့ပညာဆိုင်ရာပေါ့လေပညာသိက္ခာခေါ်ပါတယ်တော့ဒီတော့သိက္ခာ3ပါးလုံးဒီထဲပါသွားပါတယ်တော့
Now, from a practical point of view, if we subtract, if we disregard the 4 fine material jhanas out of the 15 forms of virtuous conduct charana, then we can divide the forms of conduct, virtuous conduct, into 3 groups, namely the group of training in morality, sila seka, the group of training in concentration, samadhi seka, and the group of training in wisdom, panya seka. Now, sila itself means to avoid what should be avoided. So, sila comes under this training in morality. And under the same heading also comes moderation in eating, namely bhojani matanyuta. And then the few other qualities, namely effort, virya, and mindfulness, sati, are mentioned among the 15 forms of virtuous conduct, but not concentration, samadhi. Now, even though it is not mentioned in the text, if a meditator possesses effort, virya, and also mindfulness, then quite naturally, quite automatically, it will come to the arising of concentration. So these 3 the mental factors, effort, mindfulness, and concentration, virya, sati, samadhi, we can classify these under the training in concentration, samadhi, seka. And as for learning, sutta, well, by this is meant the study of the true method of practice. And this then, if put into practice, leads to it needs a person to understand, distinctly understand, for instance, mentality and materiality, and so forth. So, sutta then comes under the training in wisdom, sampanya, seka. So, what we find is that all 3 forms of training can be or are included in the 15 forms of virtuous in the forms of virtuous conduct.
Yogi doing a pure mesology. So Javazo Mamaka Niviro Taincharo Abuma Tainin say Polima Tainin say Jow Alco Guia Lily with the E with the Jadwale time Dale Chilime Taina Kaitama Tainin say since in it Tayo since in Davashida Bogutatawa Jami Maga Taina Mufene Dinane Yoben who drive it up Shinida. Da Dia Bancha Dia, they are a city. The Taise Kalama, the Gashi Hoshi and Nane Yo the Bogu Dia on. Dio Tatina sees as a Atu the Yogi Bogoma. Tainoma, Taina Sekili, 11 months later. As I video swimmers or shoot, you must say Javido. David or Didware. Teaching, Taisha, Lego, tiny Rabble. Lady with a Jadwala. What do you time later than the Athena, dear time later than Athena? I don't ever use the word Didware, Paisa with a Didware. I don't know Dide come you, my volley. I say to them, that quite Lucy. So the wing up yoga. Dilatica, the Maritica, Pinatica, Rivoli. A piece of part of it. Babungaro, Taise Kalama. Tayina says in a Tayo says it. Era Lego, Maluda Mane Aulu. I said the bow. Cheta than as I be the swimmers were. Shoot me at the ball. Swimmers were shoot me out, but I cannot say Jador at the ball. The volley don't go anybody. I say that I only got cut or the D. Either Mamma, you shove and a say Jador at the Mari. Would you at the D, the Mari, call it? The Mari they got to you part over. Now, changing me to Mabamia, Kaja, I only must say a little tail. And I think about cover. Something about the cover. Tail of his rishi, who are taking a seat. I only need you want to say tail. Tayo says never tail of his rishi. Taking a seat, Nadia, Tina, you, dear, Titi, Punjabi. Mayo, I did it. Era Pina Kana, Pina also covered at them. So, the Dila Piedo we pianero. Tama was at Tamagona, Tama as you was about it. Era Yaleve, Shong Jazia Machine Melo, Shong Joey, Shong Mess with a Sirenaga Shiniro. Malujura, the take have it. Dila take have it. Shong Jimmy's a Sirenali Shiniro, and I let Dila take have it. Dila take a toya. Body. Dila take a toya, ye, the Mari take a toya, Pina take a toya. Posa like a Kajaro. Take her tomago, making Shivani to let a Kajaro, making Shibale shit or whatever. I did the Matica Piatica, Serenaci, Serenaci and Iratina di Pila Recava. Go Dina and go volley. We sang young lady Pila Gumabe. Pellow Tambushi, the rest of that 20 whatever.
In the words of in the words or in the view of a meditator, the situation looks like this. If one wants to change from the standing posture into the sitting posture, then first of all there will be an intention to sit down, and this then will be followed by the physical process of sitting down. And so there will be heaviness. With heaviness, the body will gradually lower or be lowered. And involved in this are only two things, namely the intention to sit down and the physical process itself. And there's no man, woman, personality, self, and so on. Now, these things have to be known by a meditator. And they have to be known because these are truly existing things, or Dhammas. A meditator who observes even more carefully will, again, this process from changing from the standing posture into the sitting posture, will see that the intention to sit down actually occurs in a series. So there's a series of intentions to sit down, and the physical process of sitting down also takes place in a series. There will be several such moments of lowering the body. And so these are now when one practices, one has to make effort, and when one practices and observes, for instance, this change of posture, then one has to make effort, and consistent mindfulness should be there, and the mind should be falling moment after moment squarely falling onto the object without moving away from the object. Now, making efforts is viriya, the consistent mindfulness is sati, and the mind squarely falling onto the object is concentration, samadhi. And these three are then viriya, sati, and samadhi. They are part of, they form the so-called samadhi group of the Eightfold Noble Path, and samadhi khanda. And then when one practices, the mind has to be aligned with the object of observation. This alignment can be taken to be right alignment, sankappa in the Pali language. And when one carefully analyzes this process of sitting down, then one will know the intention to sit down, to be mentality, nama, and one will know the physical process of sitting down to be materiality, rupa. And this kind of an understanding or knowledge is termed wisdom or knowledge, panya in the Pali language. Now, in the same context, there will be a volition in the Pali language known as cetana to avoid any form of transgression by body and speech. So, as a result of this, the three forms of virtue or morality will be included in one's practice. So, sila seka, the training in morality is there, or the sila group. The sila group is also present. So, with this, the three groups of the Eightfold Noble Path are present, namely the morality group, the concentration group, and the wisdom group. And just imagine how, or just realize how this clear vision, this is how clear vision develops, and try to appreciate how valuable this is.
အခုပြောခဲ့တဲ့သိက္ခာ3ရပ်ထဲမှာလူအစဉ်တန်ဘဝအစဉ်တန်မြန်မာရေးအတွက်တိကျတဲ့ညွှန်ကြားချက်ဓမ္မတွေလည်းပါသွားပါတယ်လူအစဉ်တန်ဘဝအစဉ်တန်မနိစ္စရေးအတွက်ဟန်တာချက်တွေလည်းပါသွားပါတယ်အစဉ်တန်မြန်မာရေးအတွက်တိကျတဲ့ညွှန်ကြားချက်ကတော့ဓမ္မလို့ခေါ်ပါတယ်ဘဝအစဉ်တန်မနိစ္စရအောင်လို့စီကံသတ်မှတ်ပေးတဲ့သဘောကတော့ဝိနည်းလို့ခေါ်ပါတယ်ချုပ်လိုက်လို့ရှိရင်ဓမ္မဝိနည်းပဲဒါပဲဒီတော့အမှားတွေမပြုမိမပြောမိအောင်ဆိုပြီးတော့စီကံတတ်မှအမှားတွေကိုဟန်တာတာပေါ့လေဟန်တာတဲ့သဘောကဩဝါဒလို့ခေါ်ပါတယ်ပါဠိလိုကောင်းတဲ့အရာတွေတန်ရှင်းတဲ့အရာတွေပြုရမယ့်အရာတွေကိုညွှန်ကြားတာကတော့အနုศาสนาလို့ခေါ်ပါတယ်တပါးနှစ်ခုပေါင်းလိုက်တဲ့အခါကျတော့ဩဝါဒအနုศาสนาတဲ့ဆိုရတယ်ဩဝါဒကဘလူကောင်းပြောကောင်းတဲ့အရာတွေဟောဟန်တာတာအနုศาสนาကလူကောင်းပြောကောင်းတဲ့အရာတွေကိုညွှန်ကြားတာဘလူကောင်းပြောကောင်းတဲ့အရာတွေကိုဟန်တာတာကတော့တဏှာလို့ဒါအရေးကြီးပါတယ်ဆရာလုပ်တဲ့ပုဂ္ဂိုလ်လူကောင်းပြောကောင်းတဲ့အရာတွေကအကျိုးရှိရတဲ့ညွှန်ကြားတာကတော့မေတ္တာထားလို့ကောင်းစားစေခြင်းလို့ပေါ့လေဒီထဲမှာစစ်မှန်တဲ့ကရုဏာနဲ့စစ်မှန်တဲ့မေတ္တာတရားတွေပါသွားပါပြီဒီမှာ
Now, as explained just now, out of the three trainings, the three trainings can be seen as instructions and prohibitions for a high standard of life, and by instruction refers to the Dhamma, namely to do what is wholesome, and prohibitions are refers to the Pali term Vinaya, namely, and the prohibitions are meant so that one's standard of life does not drop off. And when we combine these two terms, Dhamma and Vinaya, then the compound term is Dhamma Vinaya. And there is another term for prohibition, namely awada. This is meant not to be wrong. And then there is another Pali term for the instructions to do positive things, and this in the Pali language is given as anusasana. So when we combine these two terms, then it becomes awada anusasana. So once again, awada here is an admonition, more of a prohibitive nature, don't do this or that, and anusasana is an instruction or instruction or exhortation to do what is wholesome. And it is out of compassion that a prohibition is given not to do what is unwholesome, and it is out of loving kindness that a being is, or the beings are encouraged, exhorted to do what is wholesome. And both of these qualities are included in this are genuine loving kindness and genuine compassion, karuna.
Dhamma Viniyaခေါ်တဲ့ဩဝါဒအနုศาสนาကိုပဲစကားလေးတစ်လုံးနဲ့ခြုံသုံးလိုက်လို့ရှိရင်ศาสนาလို့ခေါ်ပါတယ်ศาสนาဆိုတာအဆုံးအမပေါ့လေကိုယ်နှုတ်စိတ်သုံးမျိုးလုံးရည်ကြည်ကြည်တိမ်တိမ်မှုဖြစ်ဖို့ရံပေါ့လေဆုံးမကြောင်းအဆုံးအမစကားဆုံးမခြင်းဒီလိုအဓိပ္ပာယ်လည်းရပါတယ်ဓမ္မအဲ့ဒါကိုပဲဗုဒ္ဓယဉ်ကျေးမှုလို့ခေါ်ပါတယ်ဓမ္မတိကျကျလိုက်နာကြည့်သင်ကြားတဲ့တိုင်းလိုက်နာကြည့်လို့ရှိရင်ကိုယ်နှုတ်သုံးမျိုးလုံးအရင်ဆိုင်နေกินပြီးတော့ရည်ကြည်လာမှာပဲအပြစ်တွေกินပြီးတော့တန်ရှင်းလာမှာပဲပြီးတော့ရိုင်းဆိုင်မှုတွေกินပြီးတော့ယဉ်ကျေးလာမှာပဲကျမ်းသာမှုတွေกินပြီးတော့နုညံ့သိမ်မွေ့လာမှာပဲပူလောင်မှုတွေกินတဲ့နေရာกินပြီးတော့အေးချမ်းမှုရလာမှာပဲဆက်စုပ်စရာတွေရောပါပြီးတော့တဖြည်းဖြည်းနှိမ့်သက်စရာတွေဖြစ်လာမယ်ဆိုတာပေါ့လေအဲ့ဒါလို့အဆုံးအမနဲ့ရရှိတဲ့အကျိုးရလဒ်ကိုခွင့်ရဟောထားခဲ့ပါတယ်ဓမ္မအဲ့ဒါကိုဆွာခါဒလို့ခေါ်ပါတယ်ဓမ္မအဲ့ဒီဝိဇ္ဇာကျရဏစံပါဏနဲ့ပြည့်စုံတော်မူတဲ့မြတ်စွာဘုရားရဲ့အဆုံးအမစကားတွေဟာဘယ်တော့မှအလွဲချော်အချင်းကြီးမဟုတ်ဘူးအကြောင်းနဲ့အကျိုးနဲ့ကျင့်သုံးလို့ရှိရင်ကျင့်သုံးတဲ့အကြောင်းနဲ့ရရှိတဲ့အကျိုးရလဒ်နဲ့ခွင့်ရကိုဟောထားခဲ့တာမလို့ဆွာခါဒဂုဏ်နဲ့လည်းပြည့်စုံပါတယ်
This Dhamma Vinaya, which is also called, and as we have seen, Anusasana, this can be further reduced to just one single word, namely the term sasana, which could be translated as advice or as admonition, I guess. And when one then lives according to this admonition, with this, one's from a defiled state, or being free, purified from defilements, one becomes pure. From a gross and wild state, one becomes cultured. And from a burning state, one becomes cool. And from being free from disgust, one becomes likable. So being free from things that are disgusting, one becomes lovable. And so this then is called swakata, well proclaimed in the Pali language. And the Buddha's teachings is given this attribute of swakata because it is well linked, because it is linked by cause and effect in every possible sense. Therefore, once again, it is known as swakata, well proclaimed.
အဲ့ဒီလိုအကျိုးရလဒ်တွေရဖို့ဆိုတာကတော့ဆုတောင်းနေရုံနဲ့မရပါဘူးဂုဏ်တော်တွေရွတ်ဖတ်ပြီးတော့အချိန်ကုန်နေလို့လဲဒါနဲ့လည်းအချိန်ဖြုံးနေလို့လည်းမရပါဘူးကိုယ်တိုင်ကျင့်ရပါတယ်ကိုယ်တိုင်ကျင့်တော့ကိုယ်တိုင်ရနိုင်တယ်တွေ့နိုင်တယ်တရားပါဒါမလို့သူ့ကိုလည်းစန္ဒိဋ္ဌိခလို့ဆိုပါတယ်ဆိုကတော့စန္ဒိဋ္ဌိအကာလိကနောက်ဘဝမှာအကျိုးပေးတဲ့တရားတွေဟိုအခုချက်ချင်းအကျိုးပေးတာအခုချက်ချင်းကြည့်ကြည့်ကိုယ်နှုတ်စိတ်သုံးမျိုးလုံးပေါ်လေပြည့်နာစားကြပြီးတော့တန်ရှင်းလာတဲ့ဟာတွေချက်ချင်းအကျိုးရတာပဲတော့ဒါပဲနဲ့ထင်ရှားပါတယ်တော့ချက်ချင်းယဉ်ကျေးမှုတွေဖြစ်လာတာပဲချက်ချင်းနုညံ့လာတာပဲချက်ချင်းပူလောင်မှုတွေကင်းလာတာပဲကျင့်နေတော့ကင်းလာတာပဲချက်ချင်းပဲနှစ်သက်စရာတွေဖြစ်လာတာပဲတော့ဒါပဲအကာလိကဆိုတာပေါ့လေဒါပါပဲအဲ့တော့ဒီလိုစွန့်ရင်တတိရှိတဲ့တရားမျိုးတွေကိုကြည်ကြည်စမ်းမှာကောင်းမှသိပါလိမ့်မယ်ဆိုတာဖိတ်ခေါ်တဲ့တရားပဲဆိုတာပေါ့လေဒါလည်းပဲအမှန်ထင်ရှားပါတယ်အမတ်ကရဲရဲနဲ့လာကျင့်ကြည့်ဒီလိုအကျိုးရမယ်ဆိုတာပေါ့လေရဲတင်းနဲ့ဖိတ်ခေါ်တဲ့တရားတွေပါ
Now, one does not, again, or one gains these benefits not through praying or through wishing for them, also not through recitation, but only through actual practice. And this then is expressed by another virtue of the Dhamma, namely given as sandidika, which means that the Dhamma is visible here and now. And this Dhamma shares yet another virtue, namely that of akadika, which means that it gives results right now. And one doesn't have to wait for the results to arise in the future. And the practice of this Dhamma will immediately lead a practitioner to become cultivated. It will lead a practitioner to become refined in behavior. It will immediately lead a practitioner to become lovable. And this Dhamma that possesses these various virtues as mentioned, then has yet, or is given yet another quality in the Pali language as epasiko, which means an invitation to come and see for oneself. So to come and inspect this Dhamma for oneself.
ယုံကြည်ပြီးတော့အားထုတ်လို့တရားတွေပိုင်းနေမြပိုင်းလာပြီဆိုလို့ရှိရင်မိမိတို့အတွက်တဘဝလုံးပေါ့လေအဆောင်ကောင်းအနေနဲ့ပေါ့လေဆောင်ထားတဲ့တရားပဲဆိုတာပေါ့လေမပြတ်အထုတဲ့တရားပဲဆိုတာကောင်းနားလည်လာနိုင်မယ်ရောက်ရှိတဲ့တရားကိုလည်းပဲတီးကြပေါ့လေခုနစရဏအခြေခံပြီးတော့ကျင့်တဲ့ပုဂ္ဂိုလ်တွေမှာအသိဉာဏ်ရှိလာတာပဲအဲ့လိုအသိဉာဏ်ရှိတဲ့ပုဂ္ဂိုလ်တွေသာတရားခံစားတတ်တဲ့တရားပဲဆိုတာပါလေတရားရဲ့ဂုဏ်တော်တွေလည်းပေါ်လာမှာပါပဲ
Now, if one practices this Dhamma as encouraged or as exhorted, and one has mastered this Dhamma, then it becomes a protection or a guardian. And a person who practices these various forms of virtuous conduct, charana, will surely gain clear vision, or will gain clear visions. And with this, the various virtues of the Dhamma will surely arise. The qualities of the Dhamma the quality of the Dhamma has been given as awada anusasana. And so awada here being admonition in the form of prohibiting, giving certain prohibitions, and anusasana in the sense of exhortation or just instructions to do wholesome things. Now, whose Dhamma is this? This is the Buddha's admonition, and when the Buddha's admonition is followed, then by a person, then such a person becomes known as a sāvaka and a disciple. And this is not then a disciple by just by name. And there's a definition for the term Savaka, which means a person who practices with respectfully and honestly the Buddha's Dhamma is known as a Savaka. And a person who, here in this context, practices, Vijayacharana. And to which extent one is a Savaka, this will be explained tomorrow. Now, with the Buddha's admonition or teaching, one becomes a distinct human being, and this happens with the training in morality, and then furthermore one becomes a human being, or a human being with a humane attitude, and furthermore one becomes an outstanding human being. And with the Buddha's teaching, or the Buddha's teachings will uplift one's standard of life. And it was with much compassion, karuna, that the Buddha has taught this Dhamma to the benefit of the beings. And if the Buddha's teachings were to be practiced and or adopted and practiced, then how peaceful this world would become. And this we can imagine if we just think of our environment or our place here, where it is very peaceful. So when the teacher is good, then the disciples are also bound to be good. Since the time is up, the Venerable Sayadaw would like to stop at this point and continue with his teachings tomorrow. Sadhu, sadhu.